We will call to order the regular board meeting of the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners. Good morning, my name is Marisel Hernandez. I'm the chair. Seated to my right is Commissioner William Kresse, and to my left is Commissioner Jonathan Swain.
Oh, great.
Should I restart? Okay. I think I'm loud enough that I can. Yep.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Next on the agenda is the consideration of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes? If not, we will proceed with the approval of the minutes of the canvassing board meeting of April 2nd, 2019, which reconvened and was adjourned on April 18, 2019. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 23rd, 2019?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of items that I'd like to bring up to the board members. I know we sent out a copy of the letter that we'd like to send to the Alderman about ward remap or ward precinct changes.
Yes.
I just want to know, is this okay with the board members to send out? And I haven't done it, I was waiting for approval.
Oh, yes, it is with me. That letter is fine.
It's fine with me, just fill in the name of the alderman.
We'll do so. Okay,
Or,
thank
dear
you.
sir, madam.
Yes.
In fact, in your books, you have a blue folder that I left.
Yes.
This is a copy of the tabletop cybersecurity exercise that was held down in Springfield. I have copies of some of the materials. It was really well, and it was done so well that I'm asking the state and Department of Homeland Security to do that same tabletop test here in our office.
Wonderful.
It's something that our employees need to have. You know, there's so many phishing expositions out there on the computers that I don't want somebody to give somebody an opening, basically.
So what's the tabletop test?
It's just scenarios of what do you do if, and if you look at it, it gives examples. I think it's something that we've done really well. In fact, the one that I had down in Springfield, there were 12 states that were involved in it. So it was done, and it was done really well. So I just want to let the board members know.
Okay.
And just to let the board members know, I've sat down with two of our vendors about new equipment. I've given them what we're looking for. I should be getting a response from them hopefully soon, which I'll give to the board members. But I think we're getting to the point where we're actually getting ready to look at something. Okay, you've been through the demonstrations, you've seen the proposals, but we didn't have actual numbers that we needed. I needed actual numbers and dollar signs. And put together some kind of finances on that. I know the city does not have the chance to put that money to outlay that right away, that type of money, but it's going to be spread over several years, similar to the way the county did it. So I think it's something that we will be doing the same thing and give copies to the board members as soon as possible.
When you say outlay over a couple of years, are you saying that it's a payment plan or are they holding some?
It's a payment. It's a payment plan. Yeah. Similar like you use your cell phone for election. That's what we're looking at per year. So that's something that we'll be working with. The other item,
but at the end, we'll hold title to it?
yes, we will. The other item is that we're looking at 2020. We're preparing for 2020. Computer room has sat down, is contacting all the departments of what changes they need to be made for the upcoming primary election. So even though everybody says, well, you don't have anything to do right now, we're working on the 2020 election. In fact, I'm talking to the State Board of Elections. I'd like to get a copy of their calendar as soon as possible because we're getting a lot of questions on the calendar. So before we finish our calendar, I want to look at the State Board's calendar, agree with Adam? Okay. Our finances for 2019 looks solid. Mr. Peso just gave me a copy of what we have left in the accounts, and I want to let the board members know our office is solvent right now, so I'm very pleased with that. And part of my report today is we were looking for a new purchasing agent or director, and we have Ms. Walls here, who the staff has come up with the conclusion that that's who they'd like to hire. Ms. Walls, could you come up and introduce yourself to the board members and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Is this okay here?
Yes, it is. That's where you're at. That's the hot mic.
Hot mic.
Good
morning, Chairman Hernandez, Board of Commissioners, Executive Director Gough. My name's Opal Walls. A little bit about myself. Born and raised in the city of Chicago. Attended Chicago Public Schools. Graduated from Elmhurst College eons ago. Single mom of 2. And just glad to be here today. I interviewed maybe a month or so ago, and would officially like to accept the position of purchasing agent. I've worked in government for 17 years, primarily at Chicago Public Schools, where I held the office of Chief Procurement Officer as well as a Business Diversity Officer. One of my passions is minority and women-owned businesses and making sure that they are participating on the contracts that organizations let out. I think that they are the backbone of city, that those dollars should be, tax dollars, taxpayer dollars should be held within the city as much as possible, and that minority and women-owned businesses should participate on those contracts. So that's a little bit about me. Do you have any questions?
How old are your kids?
I have a 20-year-old son who just moved back home. Lucky me.
I think we're familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah, and a 15-year-old daughter who's fresh. Well, she'll be a sophomore at Alderman High School on the north side.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're very excited about having you on board. It could be a little demanding at times.
I'm used to that.
Good. And we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
Nice to
now-
meet you all.
And now that your son's moved back, make sure he changes his residency on his voter registration.
Yeah, right.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, we're still working on contingency plans, and Mr. Allen will bring that up at his
Good.
part, but everything seems to be going well. We're working with the Department of Justice on a new settlement agreement that we should have finished soon.
Okay.
And I think everything's falling into place, Madam Chair.
Good.
Excellent.
Thank you. And Mr. Holliday isn't here today?
Mr. Holliday is not here. He said, I'm on the road, but I can call in if you need me to. And I said, no, that's all right. I think we can handle this without you, Charles.
He's a great and a loyal employee.
He
and
is.
We're
He
grateful
is
to
that.
have him. Mr. Allen?
Good morning.
morning.
Much of our work is focused on contingency and emergency plan meetings it's continued over the last week and a half since we last met. We're also working on the specifications for the canvas contracts, so I'm really excited about having a purchasing agent to hand those off to. And as well as specifications for the printing jobs for 2020 for signage, envelopes, forms, and miscellaneous materials for the elections. We're dealing with some media inquiries. As you know, there was a decision by the Illinois Appellate Court, but it's been pretty quiet overall. Mr. Lasker will make reference to that later. We attended a Reform for Illinois event, which was nice because we had a chance to run into several different officials, lawmakers who were in attendance as well. And then lastly, we're working toward updating the website. We're still trying to get through the transition to the new hosting environment. We haven't made that as as quickly as we thought we would. And we have to do that first before we change the website to .gov. That's it for now.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Let me just make one note of privilege for the record. I want to applaud Mr. Allen for many years ago coming up with the idea about the wristbands. I sent him a picture of this, and if I get a better picture, I'll send it to the board. I was at a fashion show at Whitney Young High School that my son was participating in, and one of the students, as part of the fashion piece, did an entire dress made up of our wristbands.
Really?
And talking about, and had a necklace that said that real power or something of that nature, saying that it was in the power of voting. And so it was a great picture. If I get it, I sent you one, but if I get a better copy, I will. But it was an entire dress made up of Board of Elections wristbands. So kudos.
That
Thank
is
you.
It's
wonderful.
better than using the stickers.
Yeah.
If they're going to make clothes out of them, I'm glad they're Tyvek and not easily torn then.
There you go.
And I'm trying to remember what jurisdiction, a friend of mine on Facebook friend posted a picture, recently voted, and that jurisdiction has adopted the wristbands as well. So,
Maybe we
and they
should
look
get
just
that
like ours.
dress. We should acquire it.
Maybe.
We may be able to do something.
Maybe. Yeah, it was-
And use it as part of our marketing or.
There you go.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
They could have Jim wearing it.
No. Hot mic.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, that's great.
That's cool.
We will proceed now with old business. I believe we've just discussed the status of infrastructure projects, changes in election administration, and voting equipment, electronic poll books. Are there anything?
We have Judd Ryan from ES&S here.
Hi, Judd.
Hi, good morning. Really no changes. We're still working on the same project to incorporate the DOJ form into the poll worker module of the poll book. And so we continue to meet with staff on that, but that's about it.
Okay. Thank you. Legislation?
The only thing to report is that even though they extended the deadline for the omnibus bill, they've taken no action on it. It was extended to the end of this month. I haven't heard any news about it moving anywhere.
So if they extended it through the end of this month, so what action exactly needs to be taken?
Well, it hasn't been voted on.
It hasn't been voted.
Yeah. So
And are they in session?
not officially. The session ended at the end of May.
Right.
They extended the deadline for final action on this to the end of this month.
They're not collected.
Pardon?
One of the things that we learned at that Reform for Illinois session was that they're not going to act on this.
Okay, yeah.
So.
That's what it appears.
Okay.
So there's my legislative report.
Okay, thank you. New business, we have a number of professional service agreements between the Board of Election Commissioners, and we will,
Madam Chair,
yes?
I sat down with Commissioner Swain. He had some questions. I've got the materials to him. I
Yeah,
think
so let me clarify for the record. And let me say, first of all, to all those folks that are listed, my comments are indicate in no way a comment on the work and the talent of things that people have done for this board for many, many years. The questions that I raised with Mr. Gough have been around the question of the balance between employees and contractors and how those things work, looking at things from a how shall I say, organizational chart point of view, as we've been looking at secondary positions and backups and things of that nature. And so I did have some questions that I gave to him. We missed each other a little bit this week. Got those questions, he got the data to me this morning, so I'll be reviewing that and prepared to move forward on this at the next meeting.
So are we just holding off on these,
Yes,
deferring
defer this
these
to the
until
next
the
meeting.
next meeting? Okay.
Okay. Good. I just want to make sure.
For me, that is the ones that were, the one that's new this month is, or this meeting is number 7. I'm prepared to move forward on number 7, but they're looking at 1 through 6.
I just want to make sure that the defer on this is okay with legal counsel.
It is. these contracts, I think, are expiring at the end of this month, so we would sort of like go on a month-to-month kind of basis. The terms, if we're gonna ask them to continue working for them, then we do have to continue paying them. So we'll just continue under the existing terms of the contract and get it.
For the record, we're in a much better place than we usually are, because typically we retroactively approve 3 months after they
There was a
expire.
history of
So-
retroactivity
so
here.
The
so
fact that
yes.
we're here means we're okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is actually nothing to do with that.
Then I would also go along with continuing these contracts and then voting on these matters at the next.
At the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
So is there a motion to table numbers 1 through 6?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. With respect to SKU Corporation, Mr. Glasper?
Thank you. So SKU Corporation is the small privately held business owned by John Lee, who's been working for the Board of Election Commissioners here in Chicago for quite a while, also with the county clerk's office. He's developed our voter registration system and many other components of the computer works that we use here at the Board of Elections. So what we would like is two new contracts. One is to just extend enter into a new but similar ongoing support and maintenance contract for all the various modules of SKU programming that we are using. And then he has also been working with Charles and our IT department on several new projects that are related in a lot of ways. Right, so, as you know, we've been talking about trying to streamline procedures around here and contingencies and so forth, and so part of that is actually some projects that he's going to be working on, including election judge computers, the shy poll worker support, an ongoing investigator portal support system. He's going to be working with early voting, laptop preparation. One thing that's going to be large is we're going to be getting new election system equipment, so he needs to then make sure that our existing systems communicate effectively there. We're talking about creating a new tracking system for FOIA's requests and information. You'll recall that he did just previously create the electoral board case management software. That's now in the maintenance package. So I have, the contract itself lays out letters A through Q as far as various little projects with individual estimated prices that he's presented. And those are the new developments. Implementing GIS tracking data into our computer system, providing for more internal controls over the data that we have on the website so that we would be manually handling that ourselves in-house. Many projects.
So this is an increase, definite increase in the number of projects that SKU will be performing for the board this coming year.
This is a very large new developments package.
Management system.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have contracted with them for,
They originally wanted to bid many years ago, and the company has evolved in some different things, and they've been with us, and it's worked out very well. We also got a grant from the Illinois State Board of Election on the voter registration grant, which is what SKU is working on, and the grant is for $1.9 million, so I think we'll be able to pay for it.
For the record, Mr. Lester, this company, how my concern is this. I'll just speak to my concern and you can respond to it. We're putting a lot of responsibility in a company's hands that seems to be has historically been centered around one or two people as the main contractors. So what kind of redundancy is built into this, especially when you're talking about proprietary software? And two, what provisions in the contract deal with questions of conflicts. For example, would there ever be a scenario where if there were some questions about payment or questions about deliverables, that the software could be turned off or something like that, would puts us in a precarious situation, especially considering that the company is centered around one or two individuals.
So he does have a few employees, and I'm not certain on the total. And another part is, following the recent audit that we had, they've been working on creating their own, contingency plans,
Okay.
and having things lined up in the case of catastrophe, okay? As for disputes,
Let's stop there for a second.
Okay.
Is something in the contract, or do we know offhand that if something was to happen to the lead person, God forbid, they win the lottery and go into Haiti and say, I'm never coming back, that we'll know who's following up in their stead? Do we understand that?
yes. And we also have internal staff that's trying to use these systems.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that, please. We have our employees actually sitting with the members of SKU that are being trained on all these operations.
Okay,
So I
good.
think if something happened, this agency's not gonna go down. Plus, the county's working on the same system, so we're both working, and we're working, sharing this information. So I think we're in real good shape.
Okay. But the dispute question?
So the new developments contract and the ongoing maintenance contract both have clauses that this is a work for hire. And so their creations become the property of the board.
Okay.
And so that pretty much answers that question. They have their own proprietary interests in being a sole source provider of servicing for their own software developments, but it's our program. We own the program. Remember, they've also done the JPP, the Joint Petition Project. That's a pretty large system that we've been using for quite a while now. There's going to be upgrades to that as a part of the new developments. We share that with the county. They also do similar work for the county. But it's a fairly common occurrence nationwide that at a decent-sized election authority, you're going to have your own special registration system.
So just in short, there's no concern about the switch being shut off because we actually own all of the software.
They can't.
That's all I need to know.
Yep.
Okay, great.
And actually related to this, I noticed in paragraph 5, the second, they will, provide all books, records, supporting documents and such to any auditor that the board, and that would imagine include any security audit that we'd have done if we wanted to bring in an outside contractor to perform
That's
such
correct,
work.
yes. And also upon termination of the agreement, if that would have happened, yeah.
Excellent.
Are there any further questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the contract, the professional services agreement between the Board of Election Commissioners of the City of Chicago and SKU Corporation for the term July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2021 in the amount of $28,175 per month?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and the agreement is approved.
That was the support and maintenance contract.
There's a second contract with SKU.
The one you just approved with the ongoing support and maintenance had a slight increase, as you saw, because we've added, prior new developments have now been added to the support and maintenance contract. Also, they haven't received a raise in a couple of years. The second contract then is for the new developments. That's the contract with the list of paragraphs A through I on all the various new projects they're working on. That pricing has been set forth individually per project, but then totaled up at $377,050 to be paid in 18 monthly installments.
And just for clarification, the difference between this agreement and the previous agreement that we just approved?
So you just approved the agreement that they'll continue maintaining and operating and working with us on all of our existing systems, from voter registration, joint petition project, electoral board, and so forth. This is for the new developments, which includes some enhancements to the existing systems, but also several, I think, rather important new developments that we're going to have put in place. I would like to remind the board that I was very happy with the experience working with John Lee on creating that electoral board software. The nice thing about having them right there on the 6th floor is that we were in the end able to get every little detail ironed out. And because we're still working with them and you've just approved another contract, we get to continue tweaking those programs as we go. It's much different than using a Microsoft's program where if there was something I wish I could just change a little bit about it, I can't call Bill Gates. So it's been I think I've heard nothing but positive interactions.
I particularly like paragraph 1F in the development of the 12-hour disaster recovery, contingency and disaster recovery.
Yeah, part of these have been a development out of our ongoing contingency planning efforts here this spring and summer.
Very good.
Are there any further questions? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I have a question, Madam
Yes.
Chair, and I think it might just be a Scribner's error, but when you're looking at the contract term, it's July 1st through
Yes.
2019 through 2020,
Yes.
and then all of the paragraphs refer to June
2021.
30th, 2021. So I don't know if that's...
Thank you for bringing that
Thank you.
to our attention.
Scribbling in there. Yeah, paragraph 4 mentions the term July 1, 2019 to December 31, 2020, and yet the subparagraphs under 1 are July 1, 19 to June 30, 21.
So the term of the support and maintenance agreement, the first one you just approved is a 2-year term, because that's been the history.
Right.
Whereas these new developments, they're a flat rate fee that they've agreed to give us 18 months to pay off. So this second contract is making reference to the first contract. So in each of the sub-paragraphs under paragraph 1, it's just making references to where you find these within the support and maintenance agreement. Because you see the support and maintenance agreement will extend 6 months beyond the life of this
Right.
contract.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying that.
So I
It
think
is correct the way it's written.
correct.
Okay. Okay.
So this contract here has an 18-month term.
Okay.
Understood.
Is there a motion to approve the professional services agreement with SKU Corporation for the term July 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2020, in the amount of $377,050, paid in 18-month installments of $20,947.22.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and the agreement is approved.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Just to clarify, previously I made a motion to continue, I think I may have misspoken, items 1 through 7.
No, I think you
But
said
it should have been 1 through 6.
No, you said 1 through 6.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the legal report, Mr. Lasker.
The biggest news being that on Friday of last week, the First District Appellate Court did issue a decision in the case involving the citywide mayoral term limit and consumer advocacy referendum petition that was filed with the city clerk's office last summer. You'll recall that our electoral board convened and found 2 legal reasons for keeping the referendum off the ballot. This is litigation that's actually split up into 2 lawsuits, one of which went all the way up to the Supreme Court already. That one's done. This is the original action, which has already been to the appellate court once before. So now we've got our second published opinion from the appellate court. And it did rule most specifically, you see these referenda, the electoral board didn't rule until after the questions had to be printed on the ballot for the November 2018 election. So these questions did appear on the ballot and the results have been suppressed. One of the requests that the principal proponents had made was to go back in time and certify those election results from November, but the appellate court expressly said, no, that's not going to happen. And that's really it for right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I did want to mention the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, with the Department of Justice. We've been working with the Department of Justice on accessibility in our polling places since 2016. It has taken a little longer than I think was originally anticipated. When the agreement was originally drafted, right before I actually started working with the board. The DOJ has seen very good work out of us. The DOJ appears to be quite pleased with the seriousness and the effort that we're putting into this project. But it's taking longer than originally anticipated, and so they've agreed that we're extending the deadline, well, not deadlines, but we're extending the agreement and the benchmarks. And so there's been a lot of progress in the right direction. It's just that this is a beast of a project with 2,069 precincts. So I just want commissioners to know that although we didn't reach the original goal, the DOJ is very pleased still with the efforts that the city of Chicago is making to provide greater accessibility to its polling place.
Thank you so much for all of your work with the Department of Justice and dealing with all of these important issues. And, you know, it's such an overwhelming project, but, you know, all of you have helped to tackle it, and, you know, we're always making progress on it.
Were you exploring the possibility for any attorneys that are working with us of getting CLE credit for any of this?
Well, the attorney's working with us on the accessibility project?
Or in general?
Well, we don't really have any attorneys working with us on it other than the attorneys from Equip for Equality, where we're already paying them to do that. So I hadn't been looking at getting them CLE credit for it. There were some volunteer attorneys who had gone out and done surveys.
Right.
But with all due respect to them, we've found that the new plan is that we're having smaller groups of actual trained individuals to do the surveys. The Board of Elections' own staff is going to be surveying, I should say resurveying, the privately owned polling places, whereas we're working with the city and its sister agencies. We'll be training, and that's what's going on this summer, is training their own small groups of core individuals. It sounds like the city is actually going to be using building inspectors. I mean, it's kind of... So the idea is let's use some higher quality, lower pool of better trained. We've also upgraded the survey tool and so forth.
Certainly better than those darn lawyers.
They were great.
They were great for them to volunteer and do that. 200 out on the street, that was big.
And let's put it this way, they helped us identify some of the flaws with the survey tool we were using at the time, which has been substantially refurbished since then.
Very good. Thank you.
We have no financial report. I did not receive any requests for public comment. Mr. Lasker, is there a need for executive session?
I have no need.
Does any of the commissioners?
No.
Okay. Is there then a motion to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 9th, 2019?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We are adjourned.
Have a good Christmas.